So I keep seeing people on Twitter buying Mac Minis to run OpenClaw, and I wanted to make a breakdown whether or not it's actually necessary to buy a Mac Mini in order to run OpenClaw. So before we decide that it's a good idea for you to go rush and buy a Mac Mini or not, I think it's really important that we break down how OpenClaw actually works in its most abstract terms so we have a better idea if it's necessary to go buy another machine. In the most basic terms possible, OpenClaw is essentially just orchestrating AI agents to carry out mundane workflows for you, or even giving parameters and carrying out complex tasks. But what does that actually look like? Okay, here's the simplest way to think about it. You've got your machine, and then you've got an AI model such as Claude or GPT over here, and OpenClaw lives on your machine, and it's the bridge between you and AI, right? So essentially, what happens is you send a message through WhatsApp or Telegram or whatever application you use, and OpenClaw takes that message and what tools it has available and sends all that over to Claude, right? So it packages everything up and sends it over to Claude over here. What Claude does is the thinking. It figures out what needs to happen. Maybe it says check the calendar or draft an email or look up this web page. It then sends those instructions over to OpenClaw and what it actually needs to execute and run and what like bash scripts it needs to run essentially. So it sends those instructions back to OpenClaw on your machine and it actually carries them out over here. Then it sends the results back to Claude and then Claude looks over everything and then when it's ready, it sends a final response back to OpenClaw and then back to you in the chat, letting you know everything that happened. So essentially what I'm trying to say is your machine is essentially just the hands, and Claude is actually the brains behind the operation. Your machine is passing messages, reading files, maybe opening a browser, simple stuff. The heavy thinking, the actual AI inference is happening on Claude's servers, not on your machine. So everything is actually happening over here. So why is this important? So if the AI brain actually lives in the cloud, for 99% of people that are running OpenClaw, it does. It's actually just making an API call to GPT or Claude. Then what is actually happening on your machine? Well, what's happening in your machine is it's a light Node.js process that's executing simple tasks such as routing messages, right? That's it. And a simple Raspberry Pi or a virtual cloud server could do this for you. And that's much cheaper than going out and spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a Mac Mini when it's absolutely not necessary. Now, I will say there are some people who are actually running this model locally on their machine. And, that's when these more complex processors are actually necessary. But that's not what this video is for. It's for the people that are just trying to get OpenCall up and running for the first time and trying to figure out what to do. And so for 99% of people, given the scope of what OpenClaw actually does, it's just not necessary. Okay, well now I don't want to be unfair here because there was a reason why the Mac Mini was originally chosen to be the golden boy of running OpenClaw. And so the reason really why is because the Mac Mini is pretty amazing. The processor is really powerful. It's super small and compact, and you can kind of keep it out of the way, and it's very silent. Another thing is that it absolutely just sips power in a very small amount. So it probably runs for like $1 to a month in electricity, which is pretty cool. So if you're running local models and you're actually kind of into that, then yeah, there's actually a real use case. And then another thing about it that's really nice is that there's no other way to route through iMessage unless you're using a Mac OS device. So in that sense, it's actually kind of necessary. And that's pretty cool. But I think for most people that it's not really relevant. And I think what I was stating earlier kind of makes more sense for most people. And I think it kind of resolves some ambivalence of having to fork out maybe thousands of dollars for multiple Mac minis when you could just throw up a couple VPSs. Okay, now look, I actually do understand the point where people are saying that they don't want to run OpenClaw on their personal machines because they don't want to give it root access because it's not that secure yet and it could potentially just ruin and disrupt a lot of your personal stuff. So that's why they want it kind of in an isolated container. And I totally get that. You can still buy a cheap Raspberry Pi or something that's comparable that will get you the same output that you're looking for. And I also understand that a virtual private server for the average person is really not that applicable and it's kind of going to be complicated to set up. But if you have a machine that's lying around your house that you've had for years, it's probably going to be capable of doing the job. I just recommend clearing that device completely and wiping it and then go ahead and start running OpenClaw. So if you're just trying to get OpenClaw started for the first time and you're not even a tech person, don't worry about the whole VPS thing. You can try it on your local machine if you're comfortable, but if not, try it on an old device. Do not go out and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a Mac Mini when it's absolutely not necessary. For the people that are actually in depth with it and are running local models, sure, yeah, whatever. You use a Mac Mini, it's cool, bro. Like good for you. But for most people, just like use your personal machine or use an old machine that you could completely wipe and you could do it for much cheaper. Okay, cool.